Okay, thank you. Aha. So, my name is Ben Connolly. I have the distinct pleasure and honor to introduce our speaker today, Jen Racho. Jen is in teacher training at Common Ground Meditation Center, has for quite a few years been one of the leaders of the BIPOC Sangha there, and is focusing in connecting the Dharma work with indigenous and earth-based wisdom. So we've known Jen at MDMT for a long time. A few years ago, a couple of years ago, Jen was here as one of the teachers for our Introduction to Zen Meditation program, and also was on the board of directors. And I think we have sat many Rohatsu sessions together. I know Jen probably best from the hundreds of hours we spent being quiet and taking care of things together. And so I know the spirit of your practice in my heart, and I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ben. Good morning again.
Good morning.
Happy almost summer day. No. Thanks for the introduction, Ben. I was thinking this is really special for me to be here. It's a little bit of coming home, as Ben alluded to, but almost a couple decades ago, I started my practice in the Twin Cities at the Zen Center. And so there's a lot of good feelings, a lot of good memories. It's sweet to see some old and new faces in my spiritual journey. Before I get too far ahead of myself, though, my name is Jen Racho, as Ben said. I use she, her pronouns. And I'm really grateful to be here today. I want to just help orient myself and maybe all of us to where we are, what we're doing in this time, place, the here and now. And I like to do that by just orienting myself to the directions where I am. And so I'm hoping, I think I have this right. The sun came up on the east over here to my left. I have seen many sunsets on Bidemakaska over here on my right in the west. And I want to honor the First Peoples who have stewarded this land, the seasons. These are the homelands of the Dakota and Anishinaabe people. And I also come from different lineages and different people. My family, my parents were both born in the Philippines, northern Philippines and southern Philippines. After colonization, the Philippines became a primarily, but not totally, a widely Catholic country. And so I had the actually privilege, I think, of being raised in a strong spiritual tradition in Catholicism. And it was actually in Catholicism that I really fell in love with ritual, but didn't really know it. But then when I came to Zen practice, there was something that was like, oh, this is good. This is helpful. This is grounding. So I want to answer both my family ancestors, and I actually brought a little bit of show and tell to do that, so I wouldn't forget. I don't know if you can folks see on Zoom, but this is just a little platter made of wood, handmade by of native wood in the Philippines, and inside there's some rice. It's not rice from the Philippines, but rice, as in many in the Philippines and many Asian countries, is a symbol of bounty. It's a symbol of the seasons. It's a symbol of people's connection to nature and cycles, and knowing that we are much bigger than the individual body that is in the here and now. I also want to acknowledge my spiritual ancestors. I'm fortunate to feel like I have some different lineages. I started practicing in Zen. Actually, my first long retreat or practice period was in Green Gulch in San Francisco area. And then I moved here to the Twin Cities. And so I always thought it was sweet that Suzuki Roshi, who founded San Francisco and Green Gulch, also had influence through Katagiri Roshi, who founded the Zen Center and the Zen community here. So again, this is a bit of a coming home for me. And so because it's a coming home, I kind of started to just, go back down memory lane and wanted to see what was there. So this talk is going to be about some of my reflections on this spiritual journey, which I started almost 20 years ago. And so there'll be a little bit of breadcrumbs, I call them. Someone asked me once, like, well, how did you get started in this? And I said, I actually don't know. But I do know that there were certain breadcrumbs that I just sort of followed. And I would take a breadcrumb and then, I don't know, do my thing. I'd see another breadcrumb, or maybe spiritual signpost might be a better word for it, and take that, and I just kept following it. So there'll be some breadcrumbs, some stories, some reflections. My hope is that you'll hear something that is useful for you, maybe something that you resonate with, maybe something that's affirming to you, or just feel good. Or at the very least, maybe get a little bit of a laugh, although I don't have that many jokes in here, so we'll see about that. So I'll start with the breadcrumb. One of the breadcrumbs, as I mentioned, I started to practice at Green Gulch during a practice period. Green Gulch is a Zen monastery, again, in San Francisco, and knew nothing about Zen, to be honest. Really nothing. But I was just called to it. And like here in Minnesota Zen Center, every day is waking up to meditation, to chanting, to bowing, every day. And I didn't know what the words meant to these chants, but people did them with such heart, and I was like, wow, like these folks are really, they're like into this, this isn't a let's do this for show kind of thing. And I felt so inspired. And one of the chants, the Heart Sutra, the heart of great perfection wisdom, that's also chanted here, which in, kind of a Cliff Notes version you could say is about relying on wisdom and finding wisdom to have a right understanding of things that will lead to freedom. But there was one line, there were actually like 4 words in that Heart Sutra that I was like, oh, I don't know what that means, but I want that. And the line is, with nothing to attain, a bodhisattva, someone who is seeking freedom, relies on prajna paramita, this right understanding. And thus, the mind is without hindrance. Without hindrance, there is no fear. And I heard that, I was like, wait. You're not telling me that you can actually have no fear. Like, I don't, that's not right. But every day we just chanted and chanted and chanted. And I think I was like, okay, if you say that it's possible to have no fear, then I'll look for the next breadcrumb, because that sounds real good to me. So that was my first breadcrumb. And I could share more, but I actually, the next part of this talk is a little bit of a confession. I feel like I'm on live, like reality TV now. But I want to share with you how putting together this Dharma talk was like trying to get an elephant through a needle, but I was the elephant. So there's a little dukkha, little stress involved in this. So I had all these grand ideas about this talk. This is actually like my first primetime live talk. I've done shorter ones before, and I had all these grand ideas. Oh, it's going to be so inspiring, and it's really going to show how much my practice means to me and how grateful I am, and and then Ben and Ted are going to come up to me afterwards and be like, that was amazing, Jen. Oh my God. I'll just, all of these just imaginings and rehearsing and everything. And then, and I would think about, oh, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? So you can imagine, so I'm spending a lot of energy here, just anticipating, imagining. And then when I got down to like writing my thoughts, I started to feel like pretty uneasy. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe this isn't the right time, or I don't have the right latte in front of me. I'll do it later, right? So I come back later. This is like over, I don't know, Ben told me I was going to do this talk like months ago. So I come back again and again, okay, write down on the computer. And again, I just didn't feel good. My body was tensing. I was starting to freeze. I was trying to hold my breath, and I was like, what's going on here? But we have time, still a couple more weeks. Well, finally, I had no time left to figure out this talk. And so we get to the computer, go through the motions, I feel the discomfort, and then I start to hear my thoughts. And then I start to hear, oh, maybe this isn't going to be a good talk. Maybe, you're not quite ready to do this. Or maybe I don't actually have anything to offer. Or what if it's not going to be good enough? And, on and on. And then as I'm hearing these voices, which are not new, they've been companions for me for most of my life, but they're not strangers anymore either. I can recognize them. I sort of know the feel for them. I'm not quite as terrified. Maybe it's just still a little bit. So I'm noticing these thoughts, and then I notice how my heart feels. And it senses, it's kind of tight. There's kind of sadness in there because it's like, oh, Jen, you're really kind of being hard on yourself right now, right? And it doesn't feel good. And so I stayed with the thoughts, I stayed with the body, and then I was in a lot of discomfort. I was like, I got to get out of here. I don't want to be feeling this, but the talk is coming up, so I just got to stay. I got to stay. So I stayed, and on an intellectual level, like I said, I know these habits of mine, these inner critics, this habit of being, wanting things to be perfect and just right. People liking me, people thinking like, oh, I'm a good person. But intellectually, that's not so helpful. At least not completely. And so, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. And so when the question of like, what do I do now? What I did was actually what I've done in this building over and over and over. And I just bowed. I mean, literally, I just bowed. I bowed to my stress. I bowed to the pain in my heart. I bowed to all my inner critics. I bow to all the causes and conditions that, that created these habits in this body and heart and mind. And then I bowed again, and I bowed again, and I bowed again. And if I'm being a little honest, there might have been a few tears, because my heart broke when I bowed. And that's what Zen has taught me and continues to teach me, is how to bow, how to stay with what's here, and then how to let your heart break. And when you feel that it's actually okay to let your heart break, And when you can feel that not only is it okay, but there is actually there is a next page, there is a horizon after the heartbreak. Because when you surrender, to me, bowing is a beautiful embodied practice of surrendering. When you surrender from a good place of, just wanting care for yourself or for other people, that to me is the process of the letting go of the inner critic, letting go of these habits that just have a lot of energy. They're not necessarily personal to me. Yes, they show up in Jen, but I'm pretty sure there's at least one other person in the room that can maybe relate to some of these habits, right? So I'm not alone either. And that's also what Zen practice has and the practice itself has taught me, is that I'm not alone. And with people here, with family, with my Dharma friends, but with people in the street. We share the same oxygen. We actually are made up of the same elements. The elements that are in us are actually elements in the earth. And so the bowing helps me just remember and bring all of that into being. And to me, that's support. That's support to keep practicing. It's support to keep moving in my life. And it's also support to, help hopefully kind of be the change. I know that's kind of corny, but it's true. It's like be the change and see the change that I want to see in the world. So after this is really hard, and now I'm bowing to all of my suffering, I realized that the reason why it was hard, there's actually another reason. The reason why putting together this talk was hard was because in order for me to give this talk, I was gonna have to take this seat, I would have to look at all of you in the face, and then I would just have to be who I am. And then I would have to be okay with that. And so what I mean is that I would just have to be okay with like this, this now, not the Jen, that I want to project, not that Jen or Jen somewhere out there that is the better version of this Jen here, but just this. So I'd have to be who I was in front of all of you, and then I would also have to actually be okay with that. Which to me is a little bit of it's like a two-step process, right? And so when I thought about this, and I thought, well, I'm just gonna have to be who I am, nothing more and nothing less. I was like, I feel like I've heard that phrase before, nothing, nothing holy about it, the Zen of just being who you are. I was like, I've heard that. That's a title of Tim Burkett's book, former guiding teacher and emeritus guiding teacher now at Zen Center. So I thought that was kind of funny. One of the things I thought about as I was in this state of, I don't know what you call it, dukkha, I guess, but I thought about, in Zen, we talk about seeing the original face. It's kind of seeing like who you are underneath all of those layers. And I remember in this process, I was wanting to hide, right? I just wanted to not feel all of this. And then it's almost like I wanted to cover my face, I should go under covers. And I thought, that's why that's why monks wear robes, because they take this vow to just keep seeing what they're seeing and not running away. But they're human beings, so I'm sure they must want to hide. And so that's what the robes are for, right? So you can duck and cover. Thanks, Ben. I thought I could talk a little bit more about these two things of that I realized I had to do, which was just accepting who I am, and then also being okay with that. And so the first part is about just being who I am, and to do that, I have to sort of know who I am, or who I am not, or maybe who I don't want to be, all of that stuff. But in order to do that, I have to know, and that's to me what meditation practice, Zazen, has taught me, because we return, right? We just return to the breath, or we return to sounds in the body, and we hear the thoughts in our minds, but the practice is to stay and be over and over and over. Another one of the, in Zen, there's a lot of symbolism about turning the light inward, the backward step. And that was another breadcrumb for me in this practice. One of the chants, Dogen's Fukan Zazenji, which is the universal guidelines for the practice of Zen, which basically kind of gives instructions of how to do this. One line of that is, put aside the intellectual practice of investigating words and chasing sayings, and learn the backward step that turns your light inward to illuminate yourself. Body and mind themselves will drop away, and your original face will be manifest. If you want to attain suchness, diligently practice suchness without delay. And so the backward step that Dogen is talking about is this practice of the sitting, of staying, of being mindful, whether we're sitting in the meditation hall, or we're chopping carrots, or we're going for a walk. It's the pause. It's the let's orient and arrive again into where I am right now. And through the 6 sense doors, what am I noticing? What am I sensing? And what is here? Not what is like the things I want to change about my past, or the things I kind of want to control in my future. But what is here? What is here right now? And so we develop some stamina if we practice doing this. We develop some stamina of staying. And then we also see that things, if we stay long enough with just being where we are and notice what's happening, we'll realize that things are always changing. And so thoughts come and go, emotions come and go, so there's a sense of impermanence, right? And while that can seem a little scary, this impermanence, bringing that to mind as actually the reality of how things are is also can bring a great sense of relief. And the other thing that is possible through this practice is that when we start to have continuous awareness, if we maybe go to a half-day retreat or a day-long retreat, we start to see these habits of ourselves a lot more clearly. And I'll share a story of actually one of the first times I was like, wow, saw one of my habits. I was at a retreat at Hokioji, which is a Zen retreat center in southeastern Minnesota. A lot of Zen communities use. And so this is, it's got to be at least 15 years ago, I think. And for some reason, I remember that I feel like the kitchen was outside, but maybe I'm making that up. But anyway, so, it was lunchtime. I got my lunch, and it was a lot of outdoors. It was summer, and so, okay, where am I going to have lunch? I could sit here outside. I could sit at these steps. oh, no, I think I'll go like a little bit above uphill to get a better view, right? So then I take my lunch uphill, and it's like, oh, well, it's kind of breezy over here. I bet if I turn this way to the east, there'll be even a better view, right? So then I take my lunch over there, and then I'm like getting hot, I'm getting a little sweaty. And then, but that wasn't even enough, right? I said, oh, maybe I'll go over here to this area. I don't even know. All I know is that at some point, being a little hot and sweaty, and I'm looking at my lunch, and I'm realizing I think I have 5 minutes left to eat this lunch, and then it's back to the sitting and walking meditation. And I was like, oh my gosh, Jen, like, so much grasping here of like wanting to find the right place at the right time, and you've lost like your mindful eating practice, and you've lost like having a nice lunch, and you could have sat in that first place and just like ate your lunch mindfully, looked at the trees and the grass, which is literally everywhere. And, think about this. Like, what did I think I was going to do? Find the perfect blade of grass to like admire while I was having lunch? Yeah, well, clearly that habit didn't completely go away as I suffered through putting this Dharma talk. But I saw it, is my point. Like, I could see it. It wasn't just like running in the background, ruling my life in that moment. I saw it. And because I could see it, well, then I would see it again and again and again. And I would also just sort of like, oh, there's that thing I do. Okay, we know it's not quite helpful. We know it leads to like being sweaty and unsatisfied and hungry. So maybe I'll try not to do that, right? And so that's another, that's another benefit of practice and of knowing and seeing. It's just like, how am I? Like, how am I being? How is all these causes and conditions coming up right now? And which ones do I actually want to nurture? What habits do I want to nurture? What new habits do I want to form? That's a lot of what practice has given me. Okay, so the first step was, being who I am. But then the second step was that I would have to actually be okay with who I am. And that was actually harder than the first step, I realized. I thought being still and sitting for a long time, I thought that was the hard part. I thought like only focusing on your breath, like that was the hard part, and keeping your mind clear without thoughts, which is also not what you're supposed to do. But that's what I thought in the beginning. That was the hard part. But what I've come to learn is that while this is a mind practice, for sure, it actually is a heart-opening practice. And that's what I've really been leaning into and feeling the fruits of lately. So how do I be okay with just who I am and not that other version of Jen? Well, the practice of meditation, of allowing, of just watching the same, thought go by for 1,000 times and not actually reacting to it, that definitely helps. But what I've also learned is that we can actually like practice giving care to ourselves. In Pali, the language that the Buddha used around the time of the Buddha, the word for loving kindness or friendliness is metta. And so you can actually practice like wishing metta or care for oneself, wishing metta or care for, I use my dog a lot because I have a very good relationship with my dog. And I just want the best for her. And I know she wants the best for me, so it's uncomplicated. And so that's why I practice metta with my dog, because it's a good training ground, And then I move on to myself, which sometimes I can have a little hard time offering metta to, and then I move on to the people around me, and then everybody. But it's, I don't know, for some reason, I didn't think that like developing these qualities was possible. I think I kind of thought, oh, you are who you are, and that's how you move through life. But I don't actually believe that anymore. I remember, it was another memory on a retreat. It might have been actually a mentor retreat. And I was walking in the woods, and I was feeling that same kind of angst, like something's not right in here, and it hurts, and I don't really know what it is. And I just started to feel that and feel that and feel that. And then it was a little bit, again, of sort of a bowing and surrendering moment. But what I discovered is that no matter how hard I can be on myself, no matter how difficult things are, there is this kernel, no, it may be bigger, I say it's bigger than a kernel. There is this source of care and just care in my heart. Like I know I care. I care about myself. I care about other people. And it's indestructible. It's not something anybody can take away from me. I don't even think it's something I created in myself. I think it's here. And so when I sensed into that, it was kind of like a knowing that was different than reading a book. And it's a knowing that I've carried with me, that no matter what I do, no matter what harm I cause, because I do cause harm because I'm a human being, I know I care. And that's been a foundation for my practice that has served me really, really well. I'll read a quote now from Bell Hooks. She says, "The place of suffering, the place where we are broken in spirit, when accepted and embraced, is also a place of peace and possibility. Our sufferings do not magically end. Instead, we are able to wisely, alchemically recycle them. They become the abundant waste that we use to make new growth possible." I'll read another quote from Sebene Selassie. She is a teacher in the Insight Vipassana tradition. "We're not practicing to become good meditators, to get good at sitting on a cushion every day. We're practicing in order to develop a different relationship to our experience. While we can't control what's happening around us, we can cultivate the capacity to be with what is, with more ease, joy, and freedom." Freedom is another word that I had a lot of skepticism with when I first came to practice. This idea of liberation, of freedom, probably related to that idea of, can there really be no fear? Can I really be free from fear? I believe now that I can be free from fear in moments, absolutely. Whether I'll be completely free from fear, like in this lifetime for the rest of my life, is yet to be seen. But it's good enough. It's actually more than good enough. It's better than actually anything I could have imagined. So I'll definitely take it. Oh, time flies when you're having fun, huh? So I talked about, some of the breadcrumbs that really just drew me into practice. And, as I think maybe you can tell, I've talked about bowing and chanting. And so the ritual and ceremony is what drew me in. And I think it was a way for me to one, let go of the mind and just embody something that I didn't know. And that was sort of like a leap of faith, I think, doing the bowing and the chanting, which isn't for everybody, and that's okay. But for me, it was a way to like take a step in the unknown, and a little bit of leap of faith. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Zenju Earthland Manuel is a Zen priest. She wrote a book called The Shamanic Bones of Zen, which I appreciate. And this is what she says about ritual and ceremony. We are not doing something. We are being led to an alignment with the unseen, suchness, the unexpressible, and the unsurpassable. I love that idea of like being led into alignment. We're not actually like doing something. It's not like an action from the mind that happens. It's sort of a movement of the spirit. And, that movement of the spirit makes me think of something else that I've been reflecting on. My birthday's in a couple of days. And so I have only 2 more days of being 50. And so it's been a really reflective year. But one of the things that I've been reflecting on is how important it's been for me to make this practice my own. And so, I brought a symbol of my ancestors. I practice, being in relationship with nature, and also using whatever it is in my life to practice. And so Zen is part of that, Vipassana is part of that, the Dharma is part of that, but the movement of the sun and stars is also part of that. And so, that's helped me, I guess, kind of be okay with who I am, because I have a sense of how I'm connected. I have a sense of like, I don't have to actually leave anything out of myself or my spiritual practice. One of my teachers, Carol Kano, calls it braiding wisdom. And I like that idea because it's like inclusive. And I think it's helpful, not many of us, at least in centers I've been to in the U.S., are, come from a Japanese heritage, or practiced Theravada from Thailand in that way. And so as folks in the U.S., there's a little bit of, at least for me, kind of like, what does this mean for me? And how does it feel? And is it okay that I did not grow up in Asia? And I also respect that there have been communities and generations of our Asian brothers and sisters and people who have taken care of the Dharma for a long, long time. And it is now here for us to both honor the past and also make it into our own at the same time of that honoring. Well, you're right, Ben. I had a lot more material than I thought I was going to have, but I want to leave some times for Q&A. And okay, just 2 more things I do want to say. I don't know about folks, but the world seems hard, right? It seems real hard right now. No matter who you are or what you believe, there's division, there's just a lot of difficult and harmful things happening. And so I've really been thinking about like what is my practice like in this time, and how is my practice supporting me again, kind of be the change that I want to see in the world, but also help make that external change happen. And I don't have like answers to big questions, but just asking myself, what am I practicing on a regular basis has been helpful, because I know I can either be practicing not being aware of my habits and letting them just sort of flow out of me, or I can practice cultivating being just aware, noticing whether I'm being kind or not, noticing all the edges of how I might be interacting with people. So just asking the question of what is practice, what am I practicing, is helpful. And also, excuse me, oh, I forgot I had water here. Also turning to joy. And that's not a natural, it is and it isn't. Like, I'm not the like big, joyous, wear a lot of flowers and walk around with rainbow shirts. And no offense to any of that. That's not trying to create more division here, but that's not like my kind of joy. And I tend to have a critical mind. So sometimes that means I see things a little more like glass half empty. And so I've been really leaning into appreciating what there is to appreciate and not making it any more complicated than that. So that practice has been helpful. And the last thing I do want to share is a poem. These are poems, this book, The First Free Women, original poems inspired by the early Buddhist nuns. And so they're called this collection is called the Therigatha, the verses of the elder nuns. So they were the first nuns around the time of the Buddha, and they're enlightenment, awakening poems. And they're from women of all different classes, types, princesses, courtesans, people who had a lot of wealth and people who had women who had no wealth, all kinds of backgrounds. I find all of them inspiring, but I want to share and also honor my female ancestors. This one is by Rohini, and it's called The Wandering Star. You don't become the cloth just because you put on robes. You don't turn into empty space just because you carry a bowl. The sun doesn't bow down. Threes don't throw flowers at your feet. Birds don't start answering when you call. The path will hold even the biggest mistakes. The path will make room for even your deepest regrets. But you don't become the cloth of the robe overnight. It can begin very quietly, something you barely even notice, like the touch of water on your skin, like a knife in a drawer, like the next 5 minutes, unless they're your last. The path isn't a line on a map. It's a great shining world. Enter wherever you like. You might get thrown back once or twice, but if you push through the outer layers, oh, my sisters, then you will know the true welcome that is the very essence of the path. Thank you for your kind attention. So I think we have some time for reflections, comments, questions, jokes. Oh, Ted.
Yeah, well, Jen, I'd just like to say that talk was amazing.
Oh, that was great, Ted. Thank you.
I loved your story about preparing preparing for the talk, because in the end it was amazing, because you kind of gave up on the idea that it needed to be amazing. You had ideas about it, and you had that moment where you kind of gave up your ideas and you found out, you know, what is in here? What's in here? What's going on? And the moment of the vow, which is kind of a surrender, and it's coming back to, well, what is it now? What is it now in here? And that's such a great model for how to be in difficult times. That's what I've been trying to do again and again, give up our ideas and come back to what is it in here? What is the reality of this moment right now? And it's all kind of symbolized by what is in the vow. There's surrender, and sometimes there are tears involved. It's coming back to this, and that's our practice. And you just beautifully conveyed that.
Yes.
Jen, it reminds me of a poem by Amos, I don't know if it's A-R or A-H, where he goes through an entire day describing all the things that got in the way of him writing poetry. Classes, getting lunch, all this stuff. And in the end, it's the most delightful poem that, you know, like one of my favorites. Because it just describes, you know, like, okay, what are we going through here? And so thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Thanks, Deb. It's amazing what you can find when you're not looking for something.
Jen, you have, so you spent some time with, sometimes it's called the Mahayana, and now apparently you're spending time with Theravada and Vipassana Insight. Do you haven't thought about the differences between those two, or like why they're important to you? Or?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, so I don't remember if I mentioned this. I practice, I'm in teacher training at Common Ground Meditation Center, which is in the Insight or Vipassana tradition. One of the things I've noticed is that the more I practice and get to know both, is that, I said this to Ben, that I notice more and more what the differences are between the two. And I also notice more and more what is the same about the two. And so I think so I'll answer this by telling something that I read. It was, I think, in Tricycle Magazine, which is a magazine about Buddhism. There was a interview with Jack Kornfield, who is a teacher in the Vipassana tradition, and Reb Anderson, Roshi Reb Anderson in the Zen tradition. And in that article, one of them retold the story of how Jack Kornfield came to give a Dharma talk at Green College. And Reb Anderson introduced Jack by saying that to his Zen students, Jack is gonna give you a talk and tell you everything that it's taken you 10 years to figure out. And that's a little bit of how it feels to me. And so what I mean by that is that, again, you know, Zen helps really, like, the forms help embody the teaching. And there's not as much like, well, you do this and this and this and this and this, and then you get to this. It's more of showing versus telling, which is my experience of Zen. And Vipassana is, at least the Vipassana that's practiced here in the US, which is different than in Asia, but related. Vipassana is a little bit more of the telling. It's a showing, but it's a little bit more of the telling, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
First, thank you very much for your talk. Second, I connected very much with your practice as you described it. And right now, part of my practice, I'm getting to the point where I can actually be thankful for my whole life, the way it is, the good and the bad. And it drives me to continuously practice. And my question is, how do you practice metta, but also realize that in some cases, there has to be a distance. You can only absorb so much. If you're, for lack of a better word, in a toxic situation, you can't practice all of that away, or I can't, at least.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So the question is about how to practice metta in difficult or toxic situations, because you don't want to harm, right, yourself.
How do you determine what's too much?
Yeah. So I really rely on again, I talked about just this felt sense of like how the heart and mind and spirit are feeling. And so the too much comes in when, for me, when I feel my body get tight, you know, when when my mind gets tight. You know, our body gives a lot of information about how things are and, you know, our window of tolerance, what's too much, what's too little, what's just right. And so I really come back to knowing how I'm feeling in the body to answer that question of what's too much. And about metta practice, you know, metta is actually like, it's also considered a protection practice. So it's really about cultivating the goodness in our hearts, just as much or maybe even more so than actually spreading it out. And so, so protecting ourselves involves setting boundaries, right? Because we're tuning into like, what is going to keep this heart caring? What is it going to keep it healthy? What is it going to keep it like free from unnecessary stress? And so you can feel into that heart sense and the body sense. And so when you take the boundaries you need to take with people or situations or the news, you know, that is a very skillful way for practicing and for being, again, for myself, like being the change that I want to see. Because if this heart isn't in tune in a good way, then I'm not giving the energy that's helpful and going to be helpful for other people. Thanks for the question. Should we call it?
You want to say anything?